Look, I opened this jar of rotten baby food, and well, a butterfly came out.
The latter of the two. I would say you're like you're kind of like
Welcome to the Comedians in Elevators podcast. I've got my guest Marcus Brooks here. Marcus, say hi, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
well, hello. As you heard, my name is Marcus Brooks. I'm a award-winning screenplay writer. I've been writing since I was 5 years old, and I've dabbled in just about all forms with writing, including poetry, graphic novels, and some songwriting.
Very cool. Do you want to give us a sample of any of those right now?
Sure. So I have a couple scripts that are out in the wild right now. One of them is called Tiger Lucas. It's a martial arts film about the guy who wants to step away from the world of in an underground scene and decides to basically find his path in that art form that he took on for years probably while he's struggling with his trauma from working in the field for so long.
All right. Very cool. Very cool. Well, you ready to get started? Oh, in and out. Here we go. Camera's coming back online. I think that's the cue. That means we're ready to get started. So I'll just continue. Listen, to my regular listeners, I know you don't like when at the beginning of these conversations I ask you to subscribe. None of us like it. I don't like saying it. I don't like it being in here. But it's frustrating. You know what else is frustrating? It's also frustrating when I look in the back end of the YouTube channel and I see that 56% of you that watch frequently haven't yet subscribed. And I know this because I see it in the comments section. You say things like, I didn't know I didn't subscribe. And that's actually what fuels the show. Basically, it's like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask all the time, because it enables us to build and build and build. And we're going for the long term here. Hit the subscribe button and we'll continue to build this show for you. That's my promise. Thank you to all you guys that do subscribe. It means the world to me. So the whole point of the podcast is to compare and contrast the comic versus the comedian. So I define the comic as any person telling funny jokes versus the comedian who's a funny person telling any jokes. So Marcus, would you agree that you start as a comic and evolve into a comedian?
Somewhat, I guess. Uh, I don't know. I wouldn't even really say I'm a comedic person. I feel like it depends on the situation. I can make it funny, but that's just me though.
All right, no problem. So you ready for the first question?
Yeah, hit me.
All right. So the first question is about the role of persona in comedy. So how much of the comedian's voice is a character versus their real self?
Mm, I would say, I mean, I guess it depends on the person because there are some people who puts a lot of their own voice in their work, and there's some people that just is good at being able to fabricate identity to put. It depends, but it also depends on the experience you get from their act that allows you to kind of draw to help you figure out those lines, you know?
Right. So does authenticity matter or is illusion part of the magic?
I would say it matters. It is just because ultimately it's like when you're trying to describe your experience or just tell your story, a lot of that boils down to like how much of it you can get people to relate to it. Because also some people don't relate to situations that you're trying to describe, but there's a way you can make them feel that connection by how you execute them, you know?
All right. All right. So punching up versus punching down. So where do comics versus comedians stand on this? So let me put it in some historical context. Did a jealous medieval prince become the first comedian by killing the court jester?
I question that. Hey, would you mind asking that question one more time for me?
It's a hypothetical. So did a jealous medieval prince become the first comedian by killing the court jester?
That is a good question. Um, so uh that is that is a good I gotta really I gotta think on that one.
It's a tricky
I
one.
would almost say I would almost say I feel like the the jester I would say the jester would still be the first, but obviously the the court didn't really take the joke. Obviously, took the joke a little too seriously, and you know,
Hmm.
executed the poor gesture. But then, but maybe over time he realized that, oh, well, okay, I see where he was going for it. So it almost feels like it's almost like there was how you look at it. It was almost like comedic on like both sides, where like obviously the gesture executed the joke, the guy who killed him finally saw the joke, and now he's almost seeing like almost like a punchline in his own way with with what he did, you know.
That's pretty much the intention of the question. So you hit it right on the money there, Marcus. Okay, so cultural translation of comedy. So
Thank
how do
you.
jokes that right? So how do jokes that work in one country bomb in another?
It boils down to like being aware of the context of your joke. Now, I will openly admit I'm a person that doesn't really dunk on people's jokes as long as they're funny. You know, like
Hmm.
I'm sure you hear this about, a lot of times about people offensive jokes, and in jazz, it's stuff that's like they don't bother me personally as long as it's executed right. Like if it's funny, I don't have an issue with it. But obviously, look at it from another culture, though, not everybody's going to see it that way. So I mean, yeah, your joke might be funny, but you still got to be still it still takes some of that awareness to be aware of what you're saying to them before you execute the joke, because to them they might think you're basically being offensive, even if you're ultimately just trying to be funny, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So is truth the meaning of facts?
Is truth the meaning of facts? Uh I I would say yes and also no. It is, but also but also, I mean, it also can be exaggerated though too, you know? Like, yeah, I mean, like, yeah, you can be upfront about the truth, especially your performance can be exaggerated to, I don't know, I'm trying to find out how to describe it.
It's hard to describe. That's the point of the question.
But
It's a
it can
very
be,
tricky one.
yeah, but yeah, yeah, I guess I'm not too sure. I would say yes, but also no, I suppose.
All right.
Yeah.
So crowd work versus crafted work. If comics riff like influencers in the comment section and comedians perform like in reaction videos, where's the sweet spot?
Hmm. The sweet spot. The sweet kind of just I would say it's almost going with, you know, one ideal I've actually thought about when it comes to like even like similar to like with writing, like when you're writing a joke versus like maybe writing a movie or writing a book or a poem. There's there's a form that put out on how you go about it, but also it goes based on like the moment though too.
Hmm.
That's even like how, even like as actors, even like what's the word? I'm blanking it right now. Improvise. There we go. Improvise their own work in the moment because you have someone like you have what you wrote and what you put together. But going like how people is reacting to it in the moment, you might think of, wait, I got a better idea how I can like execute it. Maybe like if I threw myself across the stage or something, look at the joke I'm about to execute. You're essentially like it's improv the improvising of it. It's yeah. So it's just like going. It's almost like finding the moment, but obviously it's just paying attention to like what's how they're going with with how you're executing your show, I would say.
All right. All right. So, very important question: advertising and self promotion. Who advertises themselves more? The comic, the comedian, or the magician? You know that place where you're not conscious and you're not sleeping either? That's your power bill to the electric company. Right here. I want us to be here with free energy, where the Wardenclyffe Tower meets the Eiffel Tower. But that's not where we are. We are here, where you've got the utility and you've got residential solar. Between these two, we know which one saves you money. This is where we can go in the meantime. But this is where I want us to be now, and this can be done now. So let me deputize you to represent DOSE, Department of Solar Efficiency, and let's get on the podcast to get the message out today. See you soon.
I would probably say the hmm. I would say that want to say the comedian. And I feel like there's comics that try to promote themselves too. The two, but it just tells it depends on it depends. Like I guess for me, like me personally, I don't promote myself as much on my socials. I try to every now and then with something that I did that was something that I might have worked on, but I just try to but I try to distance myself from part just because I'm just a little bit of I'm shy when I'm on the internet. That's just me. But I feel like the comedian though does it a lot more.
So we're breaking up a little bit. There you go. So I'll just move on to the next one in case you don't want to miss the timing here, which is about timing and delivery. Is it a science or an art? So do comics rely more on structure and comedians more on rhythm and emotion?
That is actually a really good question, and that actually goes back to what I already to something I actually previously stated. It's I feel it starts off as a structure, but once you start getting into your own momentum, then that's when you can start straying off the structure and piecing something newer together to execute what you are trying to say. It's like said before, the work that you plan, you put together is just your blueprint. It's just kind of like your baseline. But then now once you get into the performance, that's when you can really start to play with your ingredients a little bit more to more or less like to like double down on what you are trying to say in the moment and just in general.
Okay, all right, go with that. So comedy is commentary. So when does a comedian cross into becoming a philosopher or a preacher?
I would almost say in a way they already are like a philosopher in a way, and they also turn into a preacher. So I mean, just like being a preacher in like church, I mean, yeah, you are preaching to the crowd, but you also have some kind of philosophy behind what you're preaching. Not all of it, not one preacher at one church, not the same as a preacher at another church. Just like
Right.
how um you as like you in preaching your own philosophies to the crowd versus someone else preaching something else, you know?
Hmm.
It but it also just boils down to like you making it believable for what for your audience to buy what you're selling, you know what I'm saying? It that's just what it boils down to. It's just if you can sell it, that's what gets people on board with what you're saying, you know?
Hmm. All right, very important question, complex question next. So, board game Zoomcast, play versus performance. If comedy were a board game Zoomcast, are you competing as the colorist, adding tone, mood, and shading, or the Foley artist, building punchlines with soundscapes and timing? Beady, 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 beady.
The latter of the two. I would say you're like you're kind of like you're kind of like moving with how everything with your performance is moving along with it. You're going along. It's like a dance in a way, you know, where like especially like especially like even like being like being in like my position as a writer, when I'm writing my scenes, yeah, I can go at it like one way, but like when I have someone read it and they're like, I'm not really feeling it, you know, then I have to come back and look at it again, like, wait, so then what am I doing wrong? What am I trying to get you guys to do? Because like, yeah, I may be trying to force this information or force this scene or these characters down your throat, but you're not following because it feels like it's forceful. So then how do I dance around and get you to like get in the flow in the mix, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. Speaking of mix, we have a tradition here in the Comedians and Elevators podcast where the previous guest
Okay.
asks a question for the next guest. And the previous guest was John
Okay.
F.Z. Tomahu. And his question for you, Marcus, is how do you see an indie artist will survive from the advances in AI?
Don't give up because yes, AI is on the rise, and especially this was a big scare for even writers for a while too, because we at this point, some of us we're almost being viewed as being expendable. Like we just at this point our careers are basically pretty much screwed. But don't don't let that scare you because yeah, just because the AI is on the rise, it hasn't taken over. Because unfortunately, in my opinion, it still can't take away from those experiences. In some degree, I can see where like some people see some advancements with it, but you are still a storyteller, something that AI can't replicate. They can't replicate your childhood or your experiences into onto the page like you can. So you just got to remember that it's still you and still your story.
I'll go with that. So, last question legacy. Who gets remembered? Will the comics Tight Five survive time, or will the comedian's cultural point of view be more timeless?
Cultural, I want to say. It it just because I feel like that's just also just how a lot of our entertainment has been like boiled down to and how it's grown over the years. It just all boils down to that cultural impact. I remember when Friday came out with Ice Cube and Chris Tucker. It was literally the most talked movie for years. Still is the most talked movie for years. I know family members that still talks about it to this day because it just changed like their perspective on on culture with us, you know?
Hmm.
And just it's a couple of movies came out, but I don't think we got all day to go over every single one of them. But yeah, there's movies that like there's move that, but it's the cultural impact that does it. I'm a huge fan of Jim Carrey. I loved him, especially back then when he was in the Wayne's Brothers show. They just that made a big impact for me, like how his comedy worked with that time period and how to me it still feels like he's still that a lot of that still stands to these days, with his overall performances in that show.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Marcus, well, where can everybody find you online?
So I am on Instagram at Source Hill, which is all one word and only the S is capital. And LinkedIn, where you also found me on there under my name. And yeah, those are the only two places you can find me.
And those are the only two places that are relevant these days, and YouTube, of course, right? So, well, Marcus, thank you so much for being my
True.
guest, right? And for everybody else, please like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.